What's going on YouTube? I am dukedobbins FTW, and today I wanted to compare DICE's latest project, Battlefield 1, with their project before it, Star Wars Battlefront, because it's very interesting to me how these games can come from the same developer back to back on the same engine, in the same genre, and yet receive such vastly different receptions from both critics and players. Battlefront, as you may recall, saw lackluster reviews and ultimately saw its player populations bottom out. Right now, Battlefront has roughly the same total online population as Battlefield 4, a game that has been out for twice as long and has seen its sequel release. 2 sequels released, in fact. Not to mention, Battlefront just dropped a DLC accompanied by a feature-length film of a trailer and is still just barely keeping pace with a 4-year-old game. Meanwhile, Battlefield 1 is doing exceptionally well. Its reveal trailer remains the most liked trailer on YouTube. It scored significantly higher professional reviews than Battlefront and had higher week 1 sales than Battlefield 4 and Battlefield Hardline combined. And I'm not trying to play the fanboy. These are all just facts, ladies and gentlemen. Now, full disclosure, I do enjoy Battlefield, and I also was not a huge fan of Battlefront 2015, but the thing is, I want to be a Star Wars Battlefront fanboy. You know, I love Star Wars. Star Wars was the first fantasy sci-fi universe I ever fell in love with, and many of my favorite games of all time are Star Wars titles. Knights of the Old Republic, you know, the classic Battlefronts, Jedi Outcast, fucking Jedi Starfighter. I remember being 3 years old and playing make-believe Snowspeeder in an armchair after I saw Empire Strikes Back. This is back when make-believe was still a thing, because I was just so blown away by that snow battle on Hoth. What I would give to re-experience the fucking excitement and fascination I felt when I was young enough for that movie to feel more real than anything in real life. I would arrange like crayons and some of my mom's makeup brushes in front of me and you know, like a banana, and I would pretend these were my controls, and I'd extend the footrest and I'd pretend that the armchair was a snowspeeder, and I'm screaming in the back, picturing myself swooping through the AT-AT's legs and tripping them up and then blowing them to smithereens after they fall down, because for whatever reason then that armor isn't too strong for blasters. And I'm yelling at Dak, you know, in the back seat to just hang on. I'm gonna get us through this. IMAX, 3D, VR, we put all this effort into tricking people into thinking they're actually there, that it's real. We put all this effort into putting make-believe on fucking steroids. Because that's what appeals to us, that's what excites us. Because the more real it feels, the more real our emotional reactions are gonna be. In other words, the more real it feels, the more real are our feels. Now, I had to rely on crayons and a fucking hand-me-down recliner. Today's kids can get one of the many sick-ass Star Wars video games out there, and I know there's gonna be some hipster in here like, oh, the crayons are better than the game, bro, you're using your imagination. No, nuh-uh, I don't think that now, and I sure as hell wouldn't have thought that back then. Battlefront is supposed to be the sickest of the Star Wars video games, and yet I think it's clear there are some things this game failed to do that I was able to accomplish in a game of make-believe in 1997. Which is ironic, because the things they failed to do in Battlefront, they actually excelled at just 1 year later on Battlefield 1. The fundamental difference between these two games was that DICE wanted Battlefront to be like one of the arcade games you play at the movie theaters. You know what I'm talking about. Things like the 1998 Star Wars arcade game, which blew my fucking mind when I was a kid. I wanted to buy that whole thing and take it home with me. That game was so cool. But there's also, you know, like Time Crisis and the Jurassic Park series, both of which have like 10 sequels that are all arcade-based titles. It's actually a really popular genre of game. It's just that you only ever see them at movies or roundtable or at an actual arcade, few as there are today. They're addicting games because they are so simple, and you can do them, you know, casually, hanging out with your friends when you go out and you're drinking, you know, waiting for your movie to start or whatever. They're very, very simple. Your challenge is to shoot whatever enemies pop up on the screen before you. The games always move your character for you, right? They take you through the sequences, and usually you like point a little toy gun or you use a joystick, and you all you do is aim and shoot. You know, you don't have to do any higher levels of critical thinking than just aiming, shooting. You know, it's a super next-gen game of whack-a-mole, except the moles kind of shoot back. So you gotta shoot the moles before they shoot back. If they shoot you like 5 times, then you have to stick in more quarters. But you only have to rely on the most primitive, basic functions on your brain. Aiming, you know, hand-eye coordination, reaction times. It's really all those kind of games come down to. Very, very, very simple. And very fun, which is fine, because they are fun. That Star Wars game was my favorite part of going to the movies when I was a kid. And that's what it's supposed to be. Simple fun that isn't too mentally taxing. What you don't have to do is, you know, critical problem solving, which requires higher levels of brain function, and which is something that a game like Battlefield has you doing a lot. How do we take this objective? How do we take out this tank or this behemoth? How do I survive this attack? How do I get from point A to point B safely? Where should I even go in the first place? The enemies don't just pop up on your screen like fish in a barrel. You have to go find them without getting found yourself, so on and so forth, right? And it can be hard to find them. without getting seen first. It can be an incredibly complex game of chess, trying to predict your opponent's moves and whatnot. It requires a lot more mental activity. They didn't want that to be the case with Battlefront. They want all the little kids that go to Disneyland and ride the Star Wars rides to be like, fuck yeah, Star Wars, and go buy the game. They want, anyone, even adults who maybe aren't even into shooters to go, well, hey, that movie was sick. I'd kind of like to get the game. And hey, they just released a DLC based on the movie I just saw. Rogue One, right? I want to check it out. I want to be in that universe. I want it to be even more real than the 3D IMAX world I just saw. I want a world that is more than a predetermined set of linear events on a screen that I watch. I want something that reacts when I touch it. But they have to simplify things so that little Timmy and Joe Schmo don't get shit on so bad they give up on the game. But at what cost? I remember destroying AT-ATs in classic Battlefronts. It was kind of hard. Landing the tow cable shot on the thing's leg could be a tricky shot, and the pilot had to fly this really small, perfect shifting oval without crashing into the AT, and while dodging fire from AT-ST's rockets, and from infantry, and of course the AT-AT's cannons themselves. And the way Battlefront has you destroy AT-ATs now, it's simple, but the child inside of me doesn't get to experience the thrill of seeing what it might have actually been like to be in that battle. Tommy and I can't pretend we're Luke and Dak. The biggest difference between Battlefield and Battlefront was the complexity. Battlefront put the training wheels on. The radar always told you what direction to walk and where the bad guys were. It was mostly impossible to get snuck up on in that game. The maps were static, no destruction or any dynamacy. And the gunfighting was as simplistic as you can be. Most guns could fight at long range with hipfire. It was remarkably similar to an arcade game. The reticle, the enemies popping up on your screen because they can't, they basically have to pop up in front of you, unless you're on fucking Endor. There was very little bullet spread, or drop, or recoil. But there's a reason so many games put in all that kind of stuff, all these little challenging mechanics, like bullets dropping and your gun shooting up in the air. It's because gaming is about simulating the experience. It's about making you believe you're really there. And it's all the more incredible that you can simulate something fictional, but when you have your hand held through everything, the simulation is nothing more than a fraud. And people recognize that. What you had with Battlefront was a game that looked very real and sounded very real, but it did not feel real. And when that's the case, you might as well just stick with the movie. Thanks for watching. Please remember to rate. This is Batman signing out.